Okay. Hello, Sagittarius. Welcome to Catalyst Energies and welcome to your new moon astrology forecast. We are looking at the time period between the new moon in Pisces on March 2nd, 2022, up to the full moon in Virgo at 28 degrees Virgo on March 18th, 2022. So welcome back. Welcome if you are new to the channel. I just channeled the report for Sagittarius rising, sun, and moon already, and I came back over to my software and it was not recording. So I'm a little thrown off because I had just done the whole thing and it wasn't even recording. So welcome everyone and thank you for being here. Let's just get right into it, Sag. I'm going to trust that even though that seemed like a fire message that was coming through, that this time around is going to be that much better for Sagittarius, as I've had the opportunity to already do this once. So this report for Sag rising, moon, and sun, we're looking at the new moon, which was on March 2nd, 2022. Mercury and Saturn are in conjunction. Talked a lot about this in the last forecast, which was the full moon in Leo. So if you haven't checked that out, you can find that on the platform that you're on just by scrolling down. And then also too, these forecasts are going to be only on Subscribestar after this particular batch of reports. So if you've been following along and you like it and you want to have access to them, you can go to the link in the description box below for Subscribestar and you can get hooked up and be part of the fellowship there. And I'm already starting to post other things that are exclusive to subscribers, so you can check that out. So let's get right into it. Sag, out of all of the people, it seems to me that one of the things that's really standing out about the Sag forecast, and let me preface this by saying I have a stellium of Sagittarius. That means I have 3 or more planets or objects or positions in Sagittarius. I have a sun in Sagittarius in the upper part of the chart. So when I speak about Sag, just know that this is not a target in any way. This is talking about me very much as well, and being realistic about the Sag dynamics. Also keep in mind that since we are at this Pluto return point for the United States natal chart, it's also the ascendant of the United States in Sagittarius. So you can keep that in mind as you're listening as well, and maybe people will be drawn to this one for that reason. I think I might actually kind of promote it as such anyway. But for the Sagittarius individual of Sag rising, moon, and sun, I mean, all of the energy in the chart right now is in the bottom of the chart for the Sag rising person. This means that the energy is really situated in the areas that have to do with personal growth, personal knowledge, the individual consciousness developing. And one of the things that really has stuck out to me, which is why I made sure I mentioned that I have all of these really strong Sag traits as well, is that we have Uranus and we have the North Node in the 6th house. Uranus is part of the conversation for this new moon, what transits are going to unfold over the next week, and the North Node in particular, also part of the conversation, specifically when we get to the full moon, because of the relationship of that axis of Pisces and Virgo to this nodes, but in particular Neptune. Neptune having access to, or having a direct relationship with the nodes of the moon at the full moon. So it's the 6th house is an area that is a challenge for Sagittarius. It's no accident that the area of the mundane tasks of discipline, creating habits, right? Like pushing past what's glamorous and exciting and actually getting down to the minutia and your labors of your everyday life is a challenge for the Sag person, right? This is usually the area, the 6th house is where we get our shit together, and it's a challenge for the Sag person to be not organized, but details. Details really are not the first thing that a Sag person is thinking about. They are managers, right? They are looking at the big picture. They're ruled by, we ruled by Jupiter. And as you can see, Jupiter is with this new moon. So the planetary ruler for Sag people is with this new moon in another sign that it rules, which is Pisces, and Neptune is there. So this is way more powerful than it normally would be with a Pisces new moon for Sag people, because your ruler here and Neptune is the ruler of Pisces also here. So this is a conversation for Sag, about where we are personally rooted, where we are finding our own emotional stability, where our root system is, where is the core of our character and our self-esteem. Well, that grows in a lot of different places. That is the home you grew up in, right? So that's the fourth house, home and family of origin, and the traditions and customs, functional or not, that are part of that are responsible for your core stability as an individual. It is the lattice work of our family bonds that holds us so we can be emotionally vulnerable and develop our character. It is the lattice structure of our national bonds, right? Love of country is a big part of the fourth house, whether you do or not, but it's in this area, and it's faithfulness, loyalty. This is the fourth house is where the moon usually is traditionally the ruler of, because it's the Cancerian house. So Sag, at least it's a water house that you are finding that stability or that core groundedness. This is where we draw our power from personally and represents our inner and private life. It also can be a spiritual community, those bonds. It can be the commitment of your marriage at an emotional level. And it's a womb. It's that which holds us and protects us so that we can be ourselves and open our hearts, right? And let our love flow for each other. So the ground, the symbol of courage, right? The representative of valor, the spiritual vision that is being initiated in a personal or internal way, or within one's own family of origin. Perhaps you are initiating or intending to grow as a symbol in this area for other people that you love and care about and that you represent and protect, but also to the bonds that hold us all together and what type of avatar we all want to align ourselves with. We're all kind of at this point of we make a choice of what is the representative of true compassion, brotherhood, sisterhood, unconditional love. And this has a lot to do with the Sag person, where we are emotionally rooted and stabilized, and where we draw our power from. This conversation is for Sag about power, because the full moon will be in the 10th house where the power is released. And we do know Pluto, that has been going through its Pluto return for the United States chart, is about power. Okay, so the reason that I think it's interesting here with the North Node and Uranus is that it's the everyday mundane details and analysis and the works and the labors of ourselves that Sagittarius is really, primed to evolve in that area, right? And to find a sacredness in the everyday life that is the gratitude for just being here, right? That and every activity being an expression of that desire to be here and to thrive, okay? And finding that routine, finding that ritual practice within oneself, finding that habit, that discipline, that training. And it hasn't been easy because of Uranus, but there's something here about making a decision, coming to an intention, setting an intention, planting a seed within ourselves in terms of identifying with some sort of avatar of these Piscean themes in our personal life, in our home, in our family, to really expand in this area, right? Jupiter, that is in a sextile to Uranus, right? It is an investment of this dynamic that will open or unlock or allow for a transmutation within the self by way of this higher wavelength, right? Uranus is the collective third eye. It is the next octave above Mercury, which represents our own minds, our own consciousness, our own mind, our own consciousness, our own nervous system, and the way that it functions. Uranus rules Aquarius, which is actually where your third house is, right? And so it functions at the level of the collective consciousness, the perception of the collective. The next octave of the bandwidth it's not a different tone, but it's a different pitch, and it's at a higher frequency. And if there's something here about aligning with this image or this symbol in terms of our own personal and private and powerful self that is unlocking the potential in the everyday life to kind of like modulate up to the next bandwidth, right? Bring or thinking outside of the box, or considering as a result of very shifting perspective about, how one can bring this sacredness into the everyday works and the everyday labors, the everyday routine. Okay. And it's the glitching of the matrix that is allowing for us to even realize that there is one. And because of that, we also have the opportunity to kind of window shop how we want to spend, especially with Sag, how we want to spend, what is it that drives our desires to have and to thrive? What is it? That has been shifting and changing, but we have allowed ourselves to connect now to a much, much higher frequency of what that looks like as a result of the glitch, right? The glitch showing us the infinite windows of reality that we are shopping right now. And I know that it's been difficult, but once the emotional aspect of the Sag person finds a symbol to follow in the footsteps of and to grow in relation to, it's really unlocking this potential in the everyday, day-to-day minutia activity of sacredness, right? It's not easy to see the higher picture here, or to realize that instability actually allows for and psychological crisis in a lot of ways allows for one to upgrade or awaken, but that's exactly what this is. And so it has been difficult, but this commitment and this and the planting of the sword here and making a decision about where our loyalty and our faithfulness and our energy is coming from is really helping stabilize ourselves emotionally as the day-to-day routines and activities and our utilizing of our resources has not been, because the resources themselves have not been very stable. And in fact, this is where Pluto has been, and this is where Venus and Mars have been, and they're going to come together again at 0 degrees Aquarius in the 3rd house and essentially consummate their spiritual ideal of what they want to grow in terms of the mind, perception, the immediate environment, knowledge, communication, and what's right in front of you. So yes, the resources haven't been stable. And in fact, they've gone through such a massive overhaul and going through demolition as a precursor to transformation, but it's in the higher mind that we're able to, I don't want to say bypass it, but we can just tap into what it can be and what it likely is going to be, even though the resources themselves are going through a much more palpable process of unraveling, if that makes sense, okay? And again, it's in this realm of what you're doing with your resources that the Sag person is evolving, not so much, there is transformation in the resources themselves, but this is a much heavier, much more powerful and raw experience. And this is allowing the Sag person to, like I said, to open the third eye and see something that they've never seen before in terms of how to utilize resources. Maybe just because they're transforming and changing doesn't mean there aren't any. It means they're transforming and changing. And maybe it's time to think outside of the box about how to put them to good use, okay? So Mercury and Saturn. Oh my God, I want to make sure it's still recording. Okay, Mercury and Saturn in a conjunction at the new moon at the very same time. This is, reality check for the mind. Now, Mercury does appreciate being in the 3rd house. Saturn, it's very limiting, but it's also giving like a scaffolding to the conceptual framework or the scaffolding, a strong literally like a strong backbone, because we're talking about the nervous system, sensory and perception. Okay, so there's no getting around this, what your nervous system is allowing for you to register, to perceive, and to process. Okay, but it's very powerful because it's at a bandwidth that Uranus is usually acting on, right? Which is the realm of Aquarius. So there's kind of this authority and this stability of your own backbone, your own nervous system in the realm of the mind and what's right in front of you, and is allowing for your actual mind. This is going to be important as the Mercury moves into your fourth house, and we have a first quarter moon in Gemini, okay, is that the stability of the mind and the mental framework that Saturn has provided and continues to provide in the realm of the bandwidth of society in general is allowing the mind to gather has the authority and the power to gather the resources that Saturn is making very real and very secure, and being able to use those resources to do damage control in your own immediate environment, right? The communications or the way you process information, the way you perceive information even. Because it's all been here. The basis for how that can happen is already here in this area. It's just now being able to utilize that power in a more cerebral way, right? And again, we're talking about how to use these resources in a different way. And this means, I think, a certain amount of cleverness, a certain amount, again, about thinking outside of the box, but realizing that certain structures are very much in place that you can't get around, right? You can only go as far as your nervous system. Perhaps it is in the process of some sort of, I don't know, Kundalini yoga or a movement art or an energy work practice or sound healing. These are just examples that are actually utilizing the resources that you do have to change them or to upgrade them or to awaken them, right? You may have a very specific nervous system, right? Like the actual inner workings of it and how it all functions, and there's no changing that. But when you practice things like, for instance, Kundalini yoga, this is just an example. There are so many ways that one can initiate this. What you are doing is you are utilizing your resources as a body and as a nervous system to practice things that will actually change the pitch, right? Will move your nervous system up to a whole new ampage, if that makes sense, right? And it's coming through the mind and it's coming through the higher mind, okay? But it's the actual mind that's getting the power from the Saturn placement at the same time for your mind to not only be stable, but to realize that you can actually take what you have inherently and make it better. That's really what it is with the sixth house, is like, what are you doing on the day to day to actually recondition yourself, okay? So, like, you may lose a job, right? You may lose actual assets or resources. There may be a health issue of the second house that's going through massive transformation, but it's in the realm of the way you perceive these things that is actually going to allow you to change and utilize your resources and put them to work, right? Because they're just changing. You can't destroy energy, but you also can't, the perpetual motion machine is a myth at the most fundamental level, right? Because we still live in this, this death cult system. But even if you take yourself out of that into the blueprint, there's still just an oscillation or a cycle or a consistent access to it. So anyway, that's for a conversation. I'm checking my time here. So this is important because when we go to the next week, which is the first quarter moon, this is where the real crisis happens, right? The real personal crisis, the crisis in action with the moon squaring the sun. So we've had this, it's actually on the 10th. Let's go forward on the 10th. And am I still recording? Now I have unnecessary PTSD about this because I can't afford to, keep going back and doing all of these videos over and over. It's so much time. I love doing them. Wow, the messages coming through are so unique to all the signs this month. I'm really enjoying it. So, and I it's okay if I have to go back and do it again, but I am keep coming back and be like, is it still recording? So This is the first real crisis here, is this moment. But what we're going to find here is that while our own polarity within ourselves of how we feel and what we say or how we express ourselves is going to be in conflict, right? In a very distinct conflict, it's actually going to be Saturn in the realm of the mind and perception, learning, knowledge, information. It's actually going to be here that's going to steady what otherwise could turn out to be some very we're all going to, I think, have a really strong primal urge to kind of pull in and to not necessarily pull in all the way, but emotionally feel the need to almost protect all of, the potential of what can be, right? With Gemini, there's never a decision really made because it's the dialectic that allows for the constant growth or the ability to get better at something, or the competition is what and it's truly the tension between the two dualistic polarities that generates the energy, but it's not doing anything with it in Gemini other than the playing with the ideas back and forth, never settling on, never getting emotionally attached to, and it's the Lover's card. It's a commitment with the recognition of a distinction. So for Sagittarius people, the relationship itself and the energy that's generated from relationship is a fundamental part of the identity, right? And so with this square, remember that there is a trust and a surrender to what it is that we are growing into when it comes to our own inner life, our personal feelings, our personal power. There's going to be a tendency on this first quarter moon, the crisis of where do we actually, what do we do? And with the moon, this is how we adapt to the moment. And with Black Moon Lilith so close to the moon in this conjunction, I think there will be a temptation for the Sag person to kind of go back on some contracts or reconsider some contracts because you're afraid that the opportunities of multiplicity of ideas of who you can be in your relationships, if you commit to a significant or very rooted position emotionally or within your family, within your nation, within those you're loyal or faithful to, you may find that it brings out this tension or this friction, or you have to confront the emotional feeling of, oh wait, that if I do that, do I cut myself off from all these other possibilities in terms of relationships, social contracts? And that's just something that we're going to have to feel uncomfortable about. And for Sag people, we're going to, to have to make a decision and to root ourselves entirely into this position of power does challenge the feeling of infinite, mutable potential of ideas and discovery in terms of who we can be in a social relationship or a social contract. Now, it's going to be Saturn right here in the third house that at the very same time is in a trine to this moon in Gemini. So an air trine, a stable mental position. And it's Saturn, again, the nervous system as a whole, that is anchoring your mind, your perception, your communication, okay? And in particular, there will be a moment here that will remind us what we have emotionally committed ourselves to with this new moon, because again, Saturn is holding it down in the realm of perception, knowledge, and mind for the Sag person and what's right in front of us through the very mechanical function of our nervous and the power of our nervous system and the power of our nervous system to hold the higher bandwidth of energy. That's the thing about the Sagittarius, that is naturally capable of holding that higher frequency or higher bandwidth of mental energy in the mind itself. And to not forget that Saturn is holding it down. It's also very limiting, which is going to also kind of be annoying. But more so than that, I think that if we're aware of this, it's going to just be stabilizing. So we don't do anything stupid, right? We don't do anything stupid up here or ruin or compromise the intentions we set about our own personal power. And Mercury is important here because Mercury rules your seventh house, or ours, I don't have Sag rising, so Mercury rules your seventh house and is coming into Pisces, into the fourth house. So there's no limit to what Mercury can imagine in Pisces. But that also means there's no limit to the pattern recognition, and it can be very fluid and imaginative and dreamy and artistic, and a lot of really being able to express to others in a very verbal or literary way, like very poetic and I love yous and unconditional love, forgiveness, those types of things. That is coming into this. That's coming into this environment now with this first quarter square. So also remember that Saturn gave the authority to Mercury to use the bandwidth for the sake of damage control, for the sake of keeping the fire from going crazy, even if it was regardless of the karmic visitation, quote unquote, whether it be a natural disaster or the result of intention, it's still destructive. But we also have the capacity of the energy of the social collective to come together and actually deal with it. So Saturn said, yes, Mercury, I'm giving you the authority. And in fact, you are tethered here. And so go into the imaginative realms. It's, oh my gosh, I actually just got the feeling of Saturn is that tree that we have wrapped our minds around, or our nervous system around, and then the mind is jumping into the ether, right? Like Carol Ann going into the going into the TV, right? Or, jumping into the quicksand to pull someone out. But in this case, it's really just to let the mind wander and to play in the realm of Pisces. This is going to be a way to manage what may feel like, oh, if I commit to this inner realm, if I commit to these symbolic references, then it cuts me off maybe from all of the other options of who I can be in the social context. So it's okay, right? And remember, it's transitory with the moon. It'll just pass on. Right? It'll just pass on and the feeling will be over, but there's something in the conflict we need to address. And Mercury at that point will be just coming into Pisces. So very beginning and just now starting to wade into the field of consciousness. So this is also an important time for Sag. Now, the timer's gone off, so let's go to the full moon and just kind of see where it's all going, which is on the 18th of March. The moon will be at 27 to 28 degrees of Virgo in the 10th house. So again, the power aspect is very strong here with personal power, and the full moon being in the release of the power into your career, into your professional or public life. And emotionally and intuitively, right, at the full moon, we'll get full illumination and reflection of our emotional capacity to seize our own willpower in a moment of collective crisis, not to lose ourselves in the face of becoming and identifying ourselves emotionally and personally with the collective energy. And the fact that the unity that Pisces represents at the end of Pisces starts to differentiate back into their own unique signatures, which is the light going through the prism of your own internal, personal, private life, your own family, the bonds here of this fourth house. It's going to be very powerful. And Sag, are you going to be able to emotionally hold it together as the socio-political structure, the economy itself, your whole family, for instance, the extended family, maybe that goes through a crisis, and Sag has to hold it together while this is happening, because it's part of aligning with that symbol, because you surrender to the flow, you surrender to the karma of the collective, you surrender to the transcendence, and that means you don't lose yourself emotionally in the face of what it's doing collectively. At the same time, Neptune is going to be be in a connection to the nodes of the moon at the very same time. Neptune has dissolved all prior connections and all prior roots and has allowed them to spread vast and wide into a transcendental humanitarian family, right? The family is so much broader. It's so much more compassionate. It's so much more spiritual than even what you were born into. This is what Neptune does in the 4th house. So when we realize our dharma at that most base level, that most spiritual level within our own self, there's 2 things that can happen. One, if we don't do anything with it, we will still get an X-ray vision, right? When we come to terms with our limitations and our dharma, it's going to, just by default, emotionally, we will have that view into who we've been in our past lives, what the collective karma really is in the 12th house for the Sag person. So that's if we do nothing, right? Just in the awareness. If we want to take it and apply it and invest it into our own evolution, this is where we're going to be able to apply it to, which is the 6th house for Sagittarius, into the everyday. This is going to shoot Sag forward in a way spiritually, and bringing that spirituality into the everyday sacredness, the activities that have a sacred component to it, from the realization of our dharma, right? Of our dharma in the realm of home, family, spiritual community, our personal and private life, and truly where we draw our power from at the most spiritual level. It is going to allow for that spiritual dharma and that centralizing of purpose to have a direct impact and activation of the evolution in our everyday life. So Sag, I mean, it is on for Sag during this whole lunar cycle, but this first half is going to be like a pretty interesting experience. I mean, there could very well be a lot of inner family, close family ties, where you've come from, and certainly love of country. That is, with this being the chart of the United States as a Sag rising, I see that also playing out very strongly. So Sagittarius, it looks like everything has recorded. So I'm going to leave it here for now. If you're interested in a reading or energy work to support your process, you want to know your starseed origins, you want to get a natal chart reading, or you just want to get intuitive information, Reiki treatment remotely, all of those things you can do from my website, catalystenergies.net. That is in the description box below. You can join us on Telegram. You can sign up for my email list through the website. You can also become a subscriber on Subscribestar, become part of the Starseed Fellowship through that, and you can also link to that from the description box below. Thank you, Sagittarius, so much. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. I will see you on the next forecast for the full moon in Virgo. Keep it real, Sagittarius. I'll see you later. Bye.